Alright, so today we're going to be talking about why it is so difficult to learn a second language, especially if you have never learned another language before. So if this is your second language and you just have one language, or maybe you only know a little bit, it is very challenging to learn another language, as opposed to if you already speak 2 or 3 languages and you're learning another one, it's a little easier. So we're gonna get into why a second language is so different from learning like a third or fourth language, and understanding why learning a second language is difficult. It should help you to learn that second language, because then you'll know which areas you need to focus on and why you're maybe struggling in a particular area. So the more we understand, the more we can learn. So first off, I just want to talk about what learning a second language is and why it's difficult, and that mainly is because when you learn a second language, you're learning from the very beginning, and it's not like learning a first language where you're just there and you hear it all the time and you start speaking and you see things and you learn through immersion. Instead, you're learning through grammar and vocabulary, and usually a lot of memorization in the beginning. And you're basically going back to like your first years of elementary school, and you're learning all of those skills again, but not quite the same way, because when you're a child and you're going through school, in elementary school or middle school, whatever it is, you're learning your language and you're learning skills. So the skills that you're learning, right, you're learning to read, to write, to form ideas, you're learning all of these things, and these are all part of learning a language. So the better you understand these concepts and the more refined your skills are in these areas, the easier it's going to be for you to learn a second language. Because when you learn another language, you are either using the skills that you already have, or if you lack some of those skills, like maybe your writing is not as good as you would like it to be, then when you learn, let's say, Spanish, you're now going to have to learn the language, right? You have to learn all of the rules and grammar and all of that, and you have to learn to improve your writing. So the skills that you have transfer in between languages. So that's where each person is going to be very different as far as what you're learning and how quickly you progress and all of that. And when you're learning a second language as opposed to like a third language, it can be very challenging, because you usually, as a monolingual person, you usually don't know all of the linguistics aspects of the language. Like, you didn't learn, if you're a native English speaker, you likely didn't learn English by grammar. You didn't learn all of the syntax and semantics and phonetics and all of that fun stuff about linguistics in English, because you just learned it by speaking it. And you can become fluent in a language that way. But when you're learning a second language, we usually start with the grammar, and because we don't know the grammar in our native language to begin with, this is an added layer of a learning. So it's not just learning the second language, it's also learning more about our first language. So learning more about the structure of that language and really like what a language is. So it's really very deep, and I'll be addressing some of these topics a little more in my linguistics series on my channel, because there's just so much. It's just not going to fit into one video today. But that's really why it's so difficult to learn a second language, is because you've got the language, and then you also have to learn how to learn a language, which all of the linguistics involved behind that, it takes time to learn and to understand, and it's never going to be perfect. You're always going to have to work on it. But that is why if you go to learn another language, like you learn a second language, you learn Spanish, and then you learn a third language, like my third language is French, it's much easier to learn a third language because you already have a lot of those skills. So really getting over that hurdle of learning a second language, like once you do it, you can do so much. You just have to really push yourself to get that second language down, because it's a lot, you guys. but the more we understand about it, the more we can learn and the better we can get at it. Okay, so we talked a little bit about how your skills transfer, right? In reading and writing and speaking and all of that in your native language, those are going to transfer over to your new language, right? And whatever skills you have, you'll transfer those over. And if they're good, that's great. If they are needing improvement, then you've got to improve and learn your language. And what it really comes down to is self-assessment. You need to know yourself, so you need to look at how you learn and what you understand and kind of like address where you are. So maybe you're really good at acquiring vocabulary and you can do that, and maybe your writing is, and I use writing as an example pretty frequently because a lot of people struggle in writing in any language. So it's likely that this will be an area for improvement. And then speaking, of course, it's a challenge in everything. Many people struggle in speaking, but if you think about that too, like if you struggle in speaking in a second language, the challenge is, using that language, but also how good are you at speaking in your native language? And I don't mean speaking like just in conversation, but actual speech. If you go to college, you take a communication class, you take all of these different courses to learn all these different skills, and it's because people struggle in those skills. So if you want to really learn a language, you want to get good at Spanish or French or any language, you need to practice these skills. And the beauty of it is that you can practice it in any language. So if you're like, man, I really just want to practice Spanish, like kind of where I am right now, but I want to improve my writing and my speaking and all of that, you can do that in the language that you choose. Like I do it in Spanish and I practice my writing, and I'm not only improving my Spanish, but my writing abilities. So it's really cool how everything is connected this way. And you'll also see, like, as you learn another language, you process things differently in your brain. So you'll see that, like, it's very difficult to explain if you don't speak another language. But once you start to learn another language and you start off with it just being foreign, it's what we call a foreign language, and you can't understand anything, and it's just, symbols, and then gradually it starts to become clear. It starts to become clearer, at least, and little pieces of it start to make sense. And then once it makes sense in your brain and you are bilingual, or like on the spectrum of bilingual, I like to think of it, because you're never going to be like 100% in any language. You're always going to be somewhere in between, like, I don't even know, monolingual, I guess, but even monolingual, like how you still can be varying degrees of your abilities. You're going to be somewhere in between like one language or bilingual or multilingual or whatever it is. You're going to be somewhere on that spectrum. So as you start to progress, it's like you can see connections between the language and the way that your brain processes things. Like you can see your own language differently as you learn other languages, because there's just aspects of it that you don't really think about until you start learning another language, like that grammatical structure that I talked about before. You don't really break down your native language unless you're a linguist and you're studying that kind of thing. But when you learn a second language, you do, and your brain just starts to see things differently, and the languages start to mix together a little bit, and then they start to become separate. Like as you're learning, when you're first learning the languages, they'll be separate, and then at some point they start to kind of mix together, and you get them confused, and then they start to separate again, and then there's so much to it. And I'd actually like to know from you guys watching this, what was your experience learning another language? So, like, how did you learn it? Did you learn it in school? Did you learn it at home? How would you describe being bilingual? Like, how does it, it's kind of a weird question, but like, how does it feel in your brain? Because for me, it's like at this point, because I've been speaking Spanish for so long, and even before I like spoke Spanish, I was around it because I live in like pretty much a Spanish speaking country. There's Spanish everywhere. So it's always kind of been there, but not until I started learning it really did it become part of who I am, and did I start to like think in that language and become more fluent in it. Okay, so I feel like I kind of got off on a little bit of a tangent here with like, what does it feel like or what does it mean to be bilingual? But I just find it so interesting and also just so difficult to describe because it's just so complex and it's different for everyone. So let me know if you have any experiences to share. Please let me know down below and we can discuss it more in the comments and we can get into it a little bit more if you'd like. So another challenge that I want to talk to you guys about learning another language, and specifically like for me in Spanish, is phonemic constraints. So you guys might have heard like when I speak Spanish and I say words with R's in them like rojo or perro, because my little dog is down here sleeping. Here, we'll take a look. There she is. She's down there sleeping. So my little dog down there. Anyway, or words like perro. I can't really roll my R's very well, and I can kind of manipulate it in a way that it sounds like it's kind of rolling, but and it's not as noticeable in speech with the words, although people do notice it and I've heard about it, but it is a phonemic constraint for me, which means it is something that I just anatomically cannot do. And maybe I'll overcome it at some point, and because maybe it's not a phonemic constraint, but it seems to be that way. So these are challenges for people learning a language, and they vary, and you know, some people have, like for me, it's mostly that the other aspects of speaking Spanish and languages in general, I tend to be able to hear sounds pretty well and produce them pretty well as long as I'm focusing on them or have practiced them for long enough. But for some people, it's very difficult to hear those sounds. And when they're learning another language and producing each of these phonemes, so each of our sounds, right? And this is why you hear some people and you hear them speaking a certain way in their accent really is what it is. And you're like, oh, you should just improve your accent, like just speak like this. It's really not that easy for some people, depending on their, you know, their abilities. And part of that reason is because when you learn as a child, like if you learn one language or you learn another language, whatever it is, your brain adjusts to what you use. So if you grow up and you only ever speak English, then your brain is not going to know the sounds for other languages, like for Spanish or for Chinese or for whatever it is. And that's why, you know, the younger you start, the easier it is to learn a language because your brain is still developing, and really until like, I believe 25, 26, your brain is still developing. So those are the optimal years to learn a language, and the younger the better. But as you get older, you can still learn regardless of any age you are, but you may have developed some of these constraints because your brain is basically just saying like, hey, I don't use these sounds, like I don't roll R's, I don't need to know how to roll an R if you're a native English speaker. So you just don't have that, and you can practice it and develop it, and some people can develop it with, you know, without too many problems, but some people do have that constraint. Even native speakers of the language, I've met native Spanish speakers who cannot roll their R's, albeit not all that many of them, but once and again, I do meet some, and then I meet people who are English speakers and don't speak any other language who can just roll it like non-stop. Like, I can't roll on command. I can't do the trill, like, I can't do it. Like, I just can't. I can do it if I have a little bit of a momentum, like perro or carro or whatever it is, but I can't isolate the sound. But if I ever do learn how to do that and how to isolate it, I will definitely teach you guys, because I know that I'm not alone in this. Alright, so you guys got like kind of a little bit of everything in this video. You got like a little bit of the linguistics aspect, a little bit of Spanish, and the R rolling, and how the brain works, and bilingualism, and all of that. And really the purpose of this video is just to share with you guys what some of these challenges are in learning Spanish, and really their challenges just in learning a language, because the process of learning another language is pretty similar in any language that you're learning. That's why with these videos I did start like labeling them as Spanish, how to improve your Spanish listening, your Spanish speaking, your this, but really they're for anything, even your native language. You can use these skills to help you improve in your native language or in any language. And the focus, of course, is Spanish here, but really think about the skills, because if you want to learn the language, you need to have these skills. You need to develop your skills in reading and writing and listening and speaking, and you need to understand like how all of this is connected, and you need to understand yourself about how you learn and what you need and how to help yourself, how to manage your time, how to study effectively, how to have the discipline to keep going and the motivation, all of those things. It's really about yourself. So take some time and make a list of the things that you feel like you need to improve in and how you think you're going to improve in those, and then just jump in and get started. Alright, I hope that this was useful to you guys. And if you have anything to share, please let me know down below, and I'll be responding to comments. And I will see you guys back here for my regular uploading schedule on a Monday and Thursday. Ciao!